What's up, guys? How's it going? This is Daniel from Elite Furniture Moving. I want to give you a little 5 tips how to hire labor employees. Me and my company, we hired hundreds and hundreds of employees over the years. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or bad thing, but we did start hiring through the COVID, and that was a really difficult time to hire labor employees, if you remember that time. And then went through all the way to hiring up to 35 employees working for a company. So basically, the same way you wanna look at your postings, the same way you wanna look at your interviews, which is aka sales calls with the customers, the same way you want to look in your like in-person interviews, which is sometimes it's like a walkthroughs or the job. Let me start with thing number one, which is your advertise. We need to have as many people to see our ad as possible. So you're gonna put the advertising, there's gonna be on top of the ad, there's gonna be a subject. You wanna make sure the subject is catchy, because if the subject is like 18.75, whatever minimum wage, it's not gonna stand out and your ad is not gonna get clicked. You wanna put a body where it says exactly who you wanna hire, who should not be hired. Sometimes it is not legal. Check with the laws in your state. It is not legal to discriminate against different people, but obviously we all know that 99.9% of people who work in moving company, let's say, are male. So there's no way to make an ad for women or request women to apply for your ad. Try to attract the right candidate, let's say the fit men who want to work such a difficult job of lifting furniture all day. So let's go to number two. There's gonna be your qualification questions. So once you post your advertising, you wanna qualify people as much as you can. And it's super boring for some people, but you know what's less boring than hiring is to have a baller employees who make you good money and not creating the problems for your company. That's a lot better and a lot less boring than hiring. So I would put a little bit more time towards hiring rather on the front end and do all this boring work. So on the back end, maybe I don't get some incompetent people who go and tell all your customers that they first day on the job and then they don't care. How can they indicate and how can you understand if this person is a good fit or not? Basically, you want to ask them qualification questions. So first qualification question, usually I like to ask if they like to work out or any type of, because I personally don't mind working out. I like walking, I like lifting weights. So let's go for qualification. Qualification questions, basically you get different types of questions. Question number one that we like to ask would be, are you eligible to work for this job? Which means if it's a driver position, do you have a driver license? Right? If it's a mover position, can you lift heavy furniture for a long period of time? If it's a cleaner position, can you clean, can you be cleaning for a long period of time, like 8 to 10 hours, so on. So you want to make sure that person is qualified to do what you actually hiring them for. Okay, so most of the times people would ask, yes, I can lift 50 pounds or more for a long period of time, like 8 to 10 hours. That's gonna be the first question, number one. Number two, I like to ask something along the lines of, would you be able to pass a background check and drug test? So that question, a lot of the times you would be screening out all the unnecessary people who say, well, I'm drugs or heavy drug user or alcohol user or some type of deal like that. Usually people who do not answer that question or answer that negatively say, I cannot pass because I do this type of drugs or that type of drugs. Usually we tend to not to communicate with them in our group that we do not use any drugs, and I personally do not use any drugs. So that is why I just choose not to hire people who use any drugs or have any difficulties with that. All right, so the next question, number three, would be, what was the most interesting things you learned recently? 1 to 4 weeks. So this is the question basically for the attitude. We do not really wanna know what specifically people learned in the 1 to 4 weeks. If they learned to play on piano, they learned to that the grandma left some type of jewelry, or there was some painter, or they use they learn something else. As long as they answer these questions and they have a pretty long answer. We like a long answer. That means they have a good attitude towards this job and good attitude towards learning. Because if someone says, I never learned nothing, or they skip this question, that means it's going to be very difficult to teach them anything. And labor means that you'd have to take the person who knows how to do it already and just have them to do it up to the standard of your company. So basically, you're teaching the person to do the thing that they know how to do up to the standards of your company. So, like, let's say if you were in the cleaning company, you would teach people how to, everyone knows how to clean, right? So you would teach them how to, your company would clean to make the client happy, right? You would teach, if someone's a mover, everyone did moving at some point in their homes. So you just gotta teach them how to do it for other people. So basically, you wanna have a good attitude, and to have a good attitude, we check it with these questions. Say, what was the most interesting thing you learned in past 1 or 4 weeks? And the more things person answer, the better it is. So we can gauge how fast learner of this person is. All right, and the last question, number 4, would be, what was the most recent experience can you describe with this job? So we want to see if the people are actually serious about moving, because a lot of them, the answer like, I helped my brother to move, or I used to move myself many times, I have plenty of experience. And those are people usually not that serious about the job, and usually they do not have any moving experience. So we want to make a note of that in the beginning. And let's say if there's a little bit more experienced people who have some experience but still with a good attitude, we want to reach out to them first and then get them for an interview. And then maybe those people who do not have that experience, who always say that they work for themselves or help clean their mom or dad or whatever, this is not an relevant work experience, obviously. So we want to understand what kind of work experience they have. So 4 questions. Question number 1, can you drive, or can you do X, that thing that you're going to be working for? Question number 2, can you pass drug test and background check? What was the last thing that you learned in the last 1 to 4 weeks? And question number 4 is, what is your relevant experience? Can you describe? So those were 4 qualification questions, and we only hire people who answer on all 4 questions. So let's say if the person did not answer one of those 4 questions, we notice once we invite that person for work or in-person interview or so on, it's gonna be a problem with that person down the road. So maybe on one of the stages, this person just gonna quit. So we notice that the people who do not answer all the questions in the same try, they're usually more likely to quit. Almost, it was such a big difference, almost 5x more likely to quit compared to the people who would answer all the questions from the first try. So once we've seen that, we stop inviting people who do not answer these 4 questions or just answer it with 1 word or something like that.